of a palm grove would the weary traveller on the sandy wastes of Africa. If we feel this so sensibly who enjoy the opening of a lake of full three quarters of a mile in breadth directly in front of our windows, what must those do whose clearing is first opened into the depth of the forest, hemmed in on every side by a thick wall of trees, through the interminable shades of which the eye vainly endeavours to penetrate in search of objects and other scenes; but so dense is the growth of timber that all beyond the immediate clearing is wrapped in profound obscurity. A settler, on first locating his lot, knows no more of its boundaries and its natural features than he does of the North West Passage. Under such disadvantages it is 10 chances to 1 if he chooses the best situation on the land for the site of his house. This is a very sufficient reason for not putting up an expensive building till the land is sufficiently cleared to allow its advantages and disadvantages to become evident. Many eligible spots often present themselves to the eye of the settler in clearing his land, that cause him to regret having built before he could obtain a better choice of ground. But circumstances will seldom admit of delay in building in the bush. A dwelling must be raised speedily, and that generally on the first cleared acre. The emigrant, however, looks forward to some no very distant period when he shall be able to gratify both his taste and love of comfort in the erection of a handsomer and better habitation than his log house or his shanty, which he regards only in the light of a temporary accommodation. On first coming to this country nothing surprised me more than the total absence of trees about the dwelling houses and cleared lands. The axe of the chopper relentlessly levels all before him. Man appears to contend with the trees of the forest as though they were his most obnoxious enemies, for he spares neither the young sapling in its greenness nor the ancient trunk in its lofty pride. He wages war against the forest with fire and steel. There are sufficient reasons to be given for this seeming want of taste. The forest trees grow so thickly together that they have no room for expanding and putting forth lateral branches. On the contrary, they run up to an amazing height of stem, resembling seedlings on a hotbed that have not duly been thinned out. Trees of this growth, when unsupported by others, are tall, weak, and entirely divested of those graces and charms of outline and foliage that would make them desirable as ornaments to our grounds. But this is not the most cogent reason for not leaving them, supposing some more sightly than others were to be found. Instead of striking deep roots in the earth, the forest trees, with the exception of the pines, have very superficial hold in the earth. The roots, running along the surface, have no power to resist the wind when it bends the tops, which thus act as a powerful lever in tearing them from their places. The taller the tree, the more liable it is to being uprooted by storms; and if those that are hemmed in, as in the thickly planted forests, fall, you may suppose the certain fate of any isolated tree, deprived of its former protectors, when left to brave and battle with the storm. It is sure to fall, and he may chance to injure any cattle that are within its reach. This is the great reason why trees are not left in the clearing. Indeed, it is a less easy matter to spare them when chopping than I at first imagined; but the fall of one tree frequently brings down 2 or 3, or even more smaller ones that stand near it. A good chopper will endeavour to promote this as much as possible by partly chopping through smaller ones in the direction they propose the larger ones to fall. I was so desirous of preserving a few pretty sapling beech trees that pleased me, that I desired the choppers to spare them; but the only one that was saved from destruction in the chopping had to pass through a fiery ordeal, which quickly scorched and withered up its gay green leaves. It now stands a melancholy monument of the impossibility of preserving trees thus left. The only thing to be done if you desire trees is to plant them while young in favourable situations, when they take deep root and spread forth branches, the same as the trees in our parks and hedgerows. Another plan which we mean to adopt on our land is to leave several acres of forest in a convenient situation, and chop and draw out the old timbers for firewood, leaving the younger growth for ornament. This method of preserving a grove of trees is not liable to the objections formerly stated, and combines the useful with the ornamental. There is a strange excitement created in the mind whilst watching the felling of one of the gigantic pines or oaks of the forest. Proudly and immovably it seems at first to resist the storm of blows that assail its massy trunk, from the united axes of 3 or even 4 choppers. As the work of destruction continues, a slight motion is perceived, an almost imperceptible quivering of the boughs. Slowly and slowly it inclines, while the loud rending of the trunk at length warns you that its last hold on earth is gone. The axe of the chopper has performed its duty. The motion of the falling tree becomes accelerated every instant, till it comes down in thunder on the plain, with a crash that makes the earth tremble, and the neighbouring trees reel and bow before it. Though decidedly less windy on our British Isles, Canada is subject at times to sudden storms, nearly approaching to what might be termed whirlwinds and hurricanes. A description of one of these tempests I gave you in an early letter. During the present summer I witnessed another hurricane somewhat more violent and destructive in its effect. The sky became suddenly overcast with clouds of a highly electric nature. The storm came from the north west, and its fury appeared to be confined within the breadth of a few hundred yards. I was watching with some degree of interest the rapid movements in the lurid black and copper coloured clouds that were careering above the lake, when I was surprised by the report of trees falling on the opposite shore, and yet more so by seeing the air filled with scattered remnants of the pines within less than 100 yards of the house, while the wind was scarcely felt on the level ground on which I was standing. In a few seconds the hurricane swept over the water, and with irresistible power laid low not less than 30 or 40 trees, bending others to the ground like reeds. It was an awful sight to see the tall forest rocking and bowing before the fury of the storm, and with the great trunks falling one after the other, as if they had been a pack of cards thrown down by a breath. Fortunately for us, the current of the wind merely passed over our open clearing, doing us no further damage than uprooting 3 big pine trees on the ridge above the lake; but in the direction of our neighbour it did great mischief, destroying many rods of fencing, and crushing his crops with the prostrate trunks and scattered boughs, occasioning great loss and much labour to repair the mischief. The upturned roots of trees thrown down by the wind are great nuisances and disfigurements in clearings, and cause much more trouble to remove than those that have been felled by the axe. Some of the stumps of these wind fallen trees will right again if chopped from the trunk soon after they have been blown down, the weight of the roots and upturned soil being sufficient to bring them back into their former places. We have pursued this plan very frequently. We have experienced one of the most changeable seasons this summer that was possible. The spring was warm and pleasant, but from the latter part of May till the middle of harvest we had heavy rains, cloudy skies, with moist hot days, and frequent tempests of thunder and lightning, most awfully grand, but seemingly less destructive than such storms are at home. Possibly the tall forest trees divert the danger from the low dwellings, which are sufficiently sheltered from the effect of the lightning. The autumn has also proved wet and cold. I must say at present I do not think very favourably of the climate. However, it is not right to judge by so short an acquaintance with it, as every one says this summer has been unlike any of its predecessors. The insects have been a sad annoyance to us, and I hailed the approach of the autumn as a respite from their attack. for these pests are numerous and various, and no respecters of persons, as I have learned from sad experience. I am longing for home letters,